What is up, guys? I'm Kachurin, joined today by Mickel,
Hello.
and this is the draft analysis for Season 1 of the Casual Cup. Now, if you don't know what the Casual Cup is, allow me to enlighten you. The Casual Cup is a draft league run by yours truly for the purpose of helping newer players get into the draft format and hopefully come to enjoy it as much as I do. What this means is that this league may not have the best looking teams, or the most competitive games, or in general be like other draft leagues you see on YouTube. We have lots of rookies to the draft format, and some rookies to competitive Pokemon as a whole, which is partly what makes this league so unique. In this video in particular, Mickel and myself are going to be analyzing the draft and telling you all what we think works for each of our 6 teams, and what doesn't, as concisely as we can. So we drafted using the same rules and tier list as A-Drive's WBE, meaning every coach drafted 10 Mons, one from each of 5 tiers, 1 Mega, and 4 free picks from a point total of 360. Each tier is worth a certain amount of points as a free pick, shown on screen, and Megas are organized into 3 tiers of their own to help balance out powerful and underpowered Megas. A Tier 1 Mega costs you 40 of your points, a Tier 2 Mega costs no points, and a Tier 3 Mega grants 4 extra points to be used on the 4 free picks. If you want to see the tier list itself to better understand all of this, the document is going to be linked in the description. But without further ado, Mickel's going to start us off with our first overall pick in the draft, Ryan DCB and the Vigrid Vespiquens. Take it away.
All right, so with the Vigrid Vespiquens, obviously they had the advantage of taking the first pick, and interestingly enough, they decided to go with Kartana. So I do like the pick considering how absolutely powerful and scary Kartana is. It's got base 181 offense with base 109 speed, and it has beast boost. So it gets 1 kill, it can definitely run away with the game. Another thing to note is that he's got 2 other heavy hitters on the team, like Mamoswine and Chandelure, which also have 130 plus in their dominant offensive stats. So you're gonna have to be careful with this one. Playing with fire a little bit is probably the thing here. Defensively, looking at it, the team is actually very bulky and isn't as prone to being run over by other teams' offensive powerhouses. So you will need to plan carefully against this team because of that. You won't be able to immediately take one down on the word go unless you crit or set up beforehand. Yeah. Now, complementing that bulk is going to be the fact that he's got amazing trick room potential here. I'm looking at Reuniclus. Reuniclus is an incredible setter because it's almost guaranteed to take a hit. It's slow as balls, so it's going to get that trick room off, and it's going to go first next turn and potentially hurt you pretty badly. But on top of that, he's also got Vikavolt, Beware, Palisand, and a bunch of other mons that can take advantage of it on the higher speed tiers.
Yes, that's right. Great Trick Room option, but unfortunately, having a team that's so great in Trick Room means outside of Trick Room, you're a little slow. Probably the biggest weakness for Ryan's team would be his poor speed tiers. Aside from Kartana, all of his mons are really, really slow, and we have a lot of fast offensive teams in this league, so that is what I pretty much see being his biggest flaw. Honestly.
I actually 100% agree with you there. I was about to say the exact same thing. I know we did share notes, but it's good that you chimed in with that because I was going to touch on that at some point. But this is why we're working
a little slow. So with that said and done, we're going to move on to Mickel's own team, oh god, it tapped me out. The London Lycanroc. So the first thing I have to say about this team is speed tiers. Like we just said about Ryan's team, it was pretty slow, he only had 1 really fast mon, but you look at Mickel's team and you see Noivern, you see Lycanroc, you see Mega Manectric, you see Gardevoir, you see all these really fast mons, and honestly, not a lot of slow ones. His slowest mons are kind of, Toxapex for sure, but then like Silvally, Incineroar, and Incineroar is what, base 70, isn't he? I think 65, close enough. Still not that slow for a defensive mon. And alongside that, Mickel's got Volturn, the classic core. He's got Mega Manectric with the Volt Switch, Landorus with the U-turn, and a few other mons that get moves like that as well. Incineroar, Virizion, Noivern, And with a fast offensive team like this, having a Volturn core is very, very important because the most important thing for you is momentum. If you don't have the momentum, you don't have the control, your team kind of falls apart because you're all about the offense. You're all about giving those big hits, and that, on the other side, is probably the biggest weakness I see in this team. Defensively, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of lacking. You've got Toxapex, of course, and you've got Incineroar with Intimidate, but overall, it's a hyper offense team. which means as soon as you lose control of the game, you're in big trouble because you don't have a lot of mons that can switch in and take hits, but you do have a lot of mons that can dish the hits out, you know? It's just that without the control, without the momentum, a team without a lot of bulk just kind of falls apart.
That is very true. I will give you that. Also, correction, Incineroar is base 60 speed. Anyways, all things considered, I do have 3 Intimidate Mons here, as well as Toxapex. Virizion can take special hits, Gardevoir can take special hits, and Sylveon's got base 95 defenses. So it's not all bad,
yeah,
but
it's not all bad, but definitely that'd be the biggest thing I'd point out. On top of that, Hyper Offense, very well supported by hazards. You got pretty good rock setters. You've got Lycanroc gets rocks. Landorus is a phenomenal setter. And is that all you have for rocks? I know Toxapex has Toxic Spikes, but you know hazards are great for a hyper offense team, and you have very, very potent setters. But on the flip side, you don't really have very potent removal. You've got a number of mons that do get defogged. The problem is though, most of them don't really want it or don't really want to switch in on the rocks. Silvally is your best bet, but that's only one, unfortunately. Landorus Landorus most of the time wants to have those offensive options, not necessarily defog. Of course, defensive Landorus is still good, but then there's also Noivern and Articuno who just don't want to be the defogger at all because they don't want to switch into the rocks.
Not wrong. They definitely don't appreciate the rocks. Neither does Incineroar over there. But I mean, you know what? That's the challenge I've presented myself, and I just got to go around it, right?
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to move on to the 3rd overall pick in the draft, which is the Windsor Wurmples, coached by Turkeyzilla.
Beautiful. All right, so looking at this right away, the immediate offensive threats that stand out to me are going to be Scizor, Latios, and Nihilego. Scizor's got Powerful Stab and Technician, boosted priority, and the latter two, Latios and Nihilego, are pretty speedy. Latios at 110, Nihilego at 103, while having the ability to hit pretty hard and tank pretty hard on the special side as well. So a good solid offensive core there. This is complemented by Mega Sharpedo, who can obliterate teams as a late game cleaner. Base 140 offense, 50% strong jaw boost on his moves like Ice Fang, Crunch, Psychic Fangs, also Waterfall, which doesn't get the boost, but definitely
the coverage.
There.
Got Aqua Jet
it's got
priority too.
It's got exceptional coverage. Like it's a scary beast, but obviously it's frail as paper, so that's going to be an issue.
Unfortunately.
He does also have some interesting niche mons here, like Quagsire with Unaware, Tsarina with Queenly Majesty, which stops priority, and Piloswine with Eviolite, which can stop dangerous sweep attempts if used properly.
Of course, yes.
Sylveon, I do like Sylveon on this team because it's a fantastic cleric. It's got Wish and Heal Bell to do its job, and can hit back with Pixelated Boosted Hyper Voice, so can tank well on the special side as well. Last but not least, Magmortar, which was interestingly enough the first pick he made here. I will say something good about it. It has incredible coverage, great power, base 120 plus special attack, and can surprise with a Scarf set. So just be careful with that thing. Definitely. I mean, obviously easy to kill, but yeah.
Definitely. As you were saying, the team has absolutely ridiculous bulk. That's the biggest standout for me here. Nihilego, incredibly bulky special mon. Piloswine with Eviolite, just ridiculous. There's the classic bold Sylveon set with max defense. It's just impossible to break. And then Quagsire, I'll be the first one to say, Quagsire is probably one of the best tanks in his tier with both Water Absorb and Unaware's options and a great defense stat. But with great bulk comes very poor speed tiers. Yet again, that's the biggest flaw I see for this team. It's very, very slow. Latios is fast, but the rest of the mons are kind of struggling with their speed, which
that's true.
As I said with Ryan DCB's team and the Vigrid Vespiquens, having poor speed tiers isn't necessarily a terrible thing, but in this league specifically, a lot of people drafted a lot of fast offensive threats. So not having the speed to come in and deal with those is a big problem. But then another point you made about the coverage that a lot of his mons have. That's another big thing that I looked at with this team on the plus side, ignoring the speed tiers for a minute. He has this league has open Z, meaning any mon can take whatever Z crystal they want into battle and go crazy with it. And you look at the crazy coverage that a mon like Magmortar has, and you can just think about all the possibilities that mon has with a Z crystal. Scizor as well has tons of options. Nihilego can use Z crystals very well. Sylveon doesn't have a lot of coverage, but is powerful. It can use them. Latios can use them very well. He has a lot of versatile options with Z crystals, And even though he's a new player, I'm excited to see what he can do with it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential here. Another thing I did mention that outside of Mike Mortar, some of these offensive threats, like his main three, might struggle a bit with defensively steel types.
Yes.
As it can resist all three of their stab options.
Absolutely. Steel types are definitely going to be an issue for him to break if his Magmortar goes down. But that's enough about the Windsor Wurmples. We're going to move on to the 4th overall pick in the draft, UU and the Muslim Mewtwoos.
That's a great logo, by the way.
So, a few quick fire things for this team. Pretty good speed tiers. He's got 2 of the genies. They're both fast. Cryogonal's fast. Medicham is base 100, which is all right. He's got good hazard control, a number of great setters in Torterra and Amistar, who's okay. And then I believe Clefable also gets rocks, does it not? I think it does.
I believe so. I'll double check that for you.
I believe it does. But then those are good things. Speed tiers are really good. It'll help him out a lot with his biggest problem, which I find is his defenses. He has some bulky mons. Clefable is incredibly bulky. Torterra is very fat. Kamala is very, very fat and hard to break because of its comatose ability. But the problem I see for the Muslim Mewtwoos is their coverage defensively. He has 3 flying types on this team. Three flying types, and then 4 mons that are weak to fighting, and 4 mons that are weak to ice. And fighting he can cover. Fighting he does have the Mega Medicham and the Clefable, so that can be covered, but you still don't want that. And then ice, really all he's got to cover an ice type defensively is Magnezone, and that's 1 mon for a great offensive type that is going to absolutely murder your Tornadus, your Thundurus, your Torterra, and your Toucanon. And that's a problem. You can't be running around with that kind of huge exploitable weakness, especially when one of our other teams, which we'll see at the end, drafted Hard Hail. You know, it's going to be very, very difficult for UU to play around those very, very big weaknesses. But like I said before, he has the speed tiers, so we'll see what he can do with it.
Also, can confirm Clefable does get stealth.
Yes, and there you go.
Definitely going to help him out. But again, I think another thing is, can Omastar can spin too, right?
Omastar can spin, yes.
Okay. Would he prefer that as a spinner, or would he want something else on his team to do that?
Omastar's a decent spinner. Cryogonal is also a spinner, and then all 3 of those flying types get defog, so it does have some pretty alright hazard control. Of course, you don't necessarily always want to switch in your flying type on rocks to defog, but fortunately for him, 2 of them are very, very fast, so it's not always the end of the world. But yes, 2 great spinners as well, so hazard control on point. But yes, like I said, the type weakness is going to be very, very difficult for him to deal with. But moving on, the next pick in the draft, number 5, the Alolan Ninetales, coached by Sword of Strife.
All right, so first thing that jumps out at me is Garchomp. I mean, obviously, what really needs to be said about Garchomp? He can do it all. He can set rocks. He can go offensive right off the bat. He can set up.
He's got Z moves. He's got setup. He's got bulk. He's got support. He's a jack of all trades. Just an incredibly good.
He's honestly incredible. Can take a hit even from 4x on like weak things that try to force it out with HP Ice. So it's like, damn. All right, you got this. Other big mons I want to look at are Kira Black.
Oh yes.
Kira Black is that's definitely a threat. Base 170 attack.
Yeah, one of the most threatening mons in the draft format, Kira Black. Absolutely terrifying offensive threat.
Absolute unit, one would say. Of course, those are the 2 physically oriented mons, although Kira Black can go mixed. And then you also have Mega Gardevoir, who absolutely commands the special side, provides some great coverage of its own, and can support the team really well as a Mega. So if you switch it out on a special hit, you can either attack back, or you can set up and status your opponents with Will-O-Wisp or something like that. You know, do something cool. Speaking of support, Klefki's there.
Oh yeah, Klefki.
And we all know what Klefki can do.
Oh,
it's got probably the best defensive typing in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, Steel Fairy is one nasty defensive typing, very hard to break.
Oh yeah, and then it's got an incredible support move, pull to abuse with Prankster, as we know, and it's thus vital to aid a potential sweep that this team can do, and it can do because it hits a lot of speed tiers too, with Talonflame, with Garchomp. Obviously, Mega Gardevoir also sits at 100 as well, but you have mons that can definitely run with it. Speaking of Talonflame, I noted something here. So Talonflame I see now is something that can provide huge momentum right off the bat with a Flareon boosted Brave Bird and Gale Wings combo.
Yes.
And then followed up with a second Brave Bird at full HP.
Yes.
So you're able to get 2 big shots in here from Talonflame.
Yeah, with OpenZ. With OpenZ, Talonflame is going to have a much easier time than without. Because, yeah, it has that Z-move option. It has that first Gale Wings attack it can get off without losing its Gale Wings priority, which is absolutely vital if you want to make this mon work.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, that it does have that big 4 times weakness to rocks, as well as the Charizard does, and the Kyurem also has a weakness to rocks. But that's not the end of the world, because this team has absolutely phenomenal hazard control. Actually, it's got 3 rock setters in Garchomp, Metagross, and Golem, and then Klefki with the spikes, and then it has.
Yeah.
The Talonflame and the Charizard do have that weakness, but they do also carry Defog, so that is an option. But Klefki, as of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon move tutors, gets Defog. And this mon is an absolutely incredible Defogger. It's not going to be stopped by any kind of entry hazards. It's immune to Toxic Spikes. It resists Stealth Rocks. Spikes obviously will do a little bit of damage to it, but it can almost always find a way in to help remove those rocks. And then you've also got Rotom-Mow, which is another great Defogger.
Yeah.
So this team, while it does have that rock weakness, it's got stellar hazard control, which is something I really like about it. Another thing I really like about it is the absolutely absurd offensive coverage this team has. Like you mentioned, Garchomp, Gardevoir, Kyurem, incredible offensive threats that all cover a wide variety of physical and special and a bunch of different types. And you've also got the Talonflame with the fire and flying, and you've got the Rotom, who Rotoms are often slept on offensively, but they do pack a punch. Those Volt Switches do start stacking up. The damage, it's kind of immense. It's really, really good. But looking more on the defensive side of things, this team does have some good bulky mods in like Klefki, Metagross, Lapras, but it's got, like I mentioned, it does have that rock weakness. If Sword of Strife can't really find his way to remove those rocks, some of the threats you'd like to keep in the back, like the Talonflame or the Kyurem, are going to have a really hard time finding their way into the battle to do their work. And on top of that, there's also kind of a startling ice weakness in this team. 2 steel types and Lapras, which do all resist it, but Garchomp is 4 times weak to it, Rotom is weak to it, Kyurem is weak to it, and Golem, I believe, is weak to it. I'm not sure if Rock resists ice or not.
Kyurem's neutral.
Oh, is Kyurem neutral? What?
Yeah, it's Ice Dragon.
Yeah, never mind. But Garchomp is 4 times weak to it, and Rotom is weak to it. And those are two like incredibly important mons to this team. So if you can't check those ice type threats, and you lose something like Rotom, which is a great defensive pivot, or something like Garchomp, which is going to be your win con most of the time, that's a problem. And then those two of the best checks to the ice type are steel types, which are both weak to fire, and the Rotom as well is weak to fire. It's not that bad. I really do like this team a lot, but you have to find something to bash on it for, right? And having on really important mons, having those same weaknesses on things like Klefki and Rotom and Garchomp and Rotom, who are
great.
Those are pairs that you're going to be using. Those are pairs that are going to be coming to almost every battle, and if one mon from the enemy team can just break through both of them, that's a bit of an issue. But overall, a very, very solid team for Sword of Strife. I do like it a lot. But we're going to move on to the newest member to our league, the Philadelphia Flagons, coached by Jaden. Now, this team actually joined the league late.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I don't recall this, but I guess I'll.
Yes, this team joined the league late. Recently, we had Burr and a co-coach for Team Vexier, but they decided to drop out. Didn't feel like they'd have the time anymore, so Jaden stepped in to pick it up for us, and we let him basically just draft whatever team he wanted from everything that was left over. And I think he did a pretty good job with it, honestly. This team is solid. You look at it, there's not a lot of places where you can find holes. It's got pretty decent speed tiers, Sceptile being base 145, Scolipede at 112, and Landorus Incarnate at 101. Other than that, everything's kind of slow, but a couple of really fast mons is really all you need, especially when they're as powerful as Mega Sceptile, Scolipede, and Landorus Incarnate with Sand Force. There's also an absurd amount of versatility on this team. You look at almost all the mons, they have crazy coverage options. Landorus has so many Z-move options. Scolipede has a lot of different moves that can break almost any type. And then there's Necrozma, who can go physical or special, bulky or offensive. You name it. This mon can do whatever you want. it's just absolutely absurd. And then he's also got the Hippowdon as a tier 2, sets the sand. Landorus Eye obviously not being allowed to carry that Sheer Force, because Sheer Force Life Orb Landorus Eye is just kind of absurd. But Sand Force is going to pack just as much of a punch. So with the Hippowdon setting the sand up for him. So overall, just a crazy offensive presence from this team. I do see some problems with, again, momentum, like I was saying for a lot of the other teams. The Philadelphia Flareons don't really have an awful lot of Mons that can just kind of switch around. There's no real Volt turn core here. Landorus gets U-turn. I think Togedemaru might get Volt Switch, but it's not really an incredibly good pivot. Landorus is a good pivot, but everything else, not so much. And obviously the other option, if you don't have that Volt turn core, is just to switch into a tanky Mon, take a hit, and try and get your momentum back that way. But a lot of the defensive Mons on this team aren't really all that threatening. There's not a lot to be scared of if a Floor just switches in and tanks a hit. The only move it's got is Moonblast. There's no surprises. It's really going to be hard for him to get the momentum back in his favor with defensive play like that, I find. And that's really what I think will be the biggest trouble for this team. Because other than that, like the offensive presence, the versatility on the offensive Mons, the speed, everything is just really, really good. But those defensive pivots, I don't really see the wow factor, that surprise that's going to help him get back into a losing game.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of noticed that too. Although I will say that he does have good entry hazard removal. He's got Blastoise there, which definitely do the job.
Got the Rapid Spin. Floor just actually has Defog as well, and then as well as Landorus and Sigilyph.
Yeah, I do like the Scolipede pick because that's definitely something that can be scary if left unchecked. Because Speed Boost is what it is.
A really good ability.
It makes otherwise unremarkable Mons pretty nutty. So
indeed. So with all that said, I think we're going to move on to the next team, which is not too shabby in my opinion. This team's kind of nice. It's my very own Oshawa Oshawotts. Take it away, Mickel. What do you got to say?
Look at you hyping it up. All right. So, well, you mentioned it in the draft channel. You mentioned it to basically anybody else who'd listen. But your team has entry hazards.
It's true.
You have rocks upon rocks, and in case it wasn't always obvious, you have sticky web setters.
Yes,
so
2 of them, in fact.
You've got Araquanid, and you've got Slurpuff, who I actually didn't know could do that, but then thinking about it, it makes sense. Nice. Good stuff there. You're definitely going to be gassing up a few people with that. Flying types be damned. But hey. Mega Scizor. All right, so your Mega pick is pretty nutty because he's basically Scizor, except somehow even bulkier and stronger.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Stab Technician, Bullet Punch, great defensive typing, reliable recovery as well with Roost. Goodra kind of mirrors it on the special side. While it doesn't have a reliable recovery of its own, it's going to take a crap ton of hits on the special
Absolutely.
front.
Incredible special tank.
Incredible special tank, can go even further with the Salt Vest if needed. But the other thing is, it's got 110 offenses, I believe, so it can go either physical or special, and it has the coverage to do so.
Yep, got that versatility.
Very versatile. We stand versatility in this house.
Absolutely.
Anyways, continuing on, we've got another versatile monster over here. The Disruptive Force himself, Tornadus Therian form. This guy, I feel like he's probably going to be the most important Mon in your team for generating momentum, because it's got lots of utility like Defog, Knockoff Taunt. It has U-Turn Regenerator as a combination. It's got power and speed outside of that. It can fulfill a bunch of roles. I'm interested to see how you run yours, because I feel like it's really gonna kind of showcase this team's identity a bit. Another thing I wanted to touch on as well is that you have a bunch of niche mons that can fill needs dependent on matchup. So you have Doug Trio as your Arena Trap momentum stopper, as you mentioned last night. Slurpuff, as you know, can do a belly drum sweep.
Yes, Slurpuff
Miltank
has that belly drum unburden. Kind of crazy.
That's true. The only downside to that is you can only set that up once.
Yes.
And if you get forced out, then Slurpuff is basically a dead spot.
Unfortunately.
So you got to be careful with that. You also have Golem Alola, which is I actually like because it's kind of like Magnezone in that it can Magnet Pull Trap.
That's right, yes.
Other steel types and knock them into the depths with Earthquake.
Just kind of a weaker Magnezone.
Weaker Magnezone. But also shares that same 4x weakness to ground. So yes, you'd be right about that.
Yes.
Another thing I wanted to add in particular, I know like obviously, Miltank is another one I wanted to highlight because you can set up rocks and you can tank with it, and it gets reliable recovery in Milk Drink, so that's pretty cool. Some of your mons are susceptible to status conditions. You did mention that you have Clerics, which is good, but like I said, Slurpuff is a mon that would suffer if it gets burned, for example. Miltank doesn't like Toxic. Araquanid can only rely on water coverage for offenses, so if something happens to it, it's basically a cooked spider, so to speak. Nobody eats those, but you know, it's definitely a concern. But you do have a lot of pieces that can make it work just fine, and you have the status removal. So
yes, and like you were saying about that Tornadus Therian, this mon is really the glue that holds the team together. It's incredibly bulky. It has Regenerator, so it can U-turn out and get all that HP back. And then it's also it's got a base 121 speed, which is a little crazy for a defensive mon. Speaking of speed, the speed tiers on this team are okay. You know, like you look at it, you don't see a crazy amount of speed demon. Scissor's kind of slower than you would want it to be. Tornadus and Dugtrio are kind of the fastest things here, but that's why you got the sticky webs. You know, the sticky webs patch up the speed problem quite nicely, and you've got the fast U-turn in Tornadus, and then Scizor and Araquanid as well when the webs are up, and then Rotom with the Volt Switch really helps you keep the momentum up. Once the webs are down, it's going to be really hard for opponents to find an opening where they can be offensive on this team because you can constantly be switching out, and if you get that nice situation where you can bring in Dugtrio or Golem to trap them on in while you have control and just blow them away, you just tear holes in teams like nobody's business. It's kind of crazy how well the team works together in my personal opinion, but
I can imagine.
Yes.
Now, can I add one more thing? If you go up against the Trick Room team, that might be.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they bring Trick Room and I've got webs down, that's a problem. But you know, you can always find ways to stall it out. Like you said, I've got a lot of really good bulky mons. But honestly, the biggest problem I see for this team myself is that while I do have 3 different mons that can set Stealth Rocks, Miltank is the only one that really wants to bring it most of the time. Golem and Dugtrio both get Stealth Rocks as well, but their roles are more offensive and more the trapping and eliminating threats, whereas Miltank is kind of the more defensive mod. But so against teams that are weak to rocks, like a lot of teams are, it's going to be difficult, I think, for me to consistently get those hazards up. Removal isn't really a problem that I think I'll be faced with, but getting hazards up in the face of my opponents, I think, could be one of my bigger issues. But that's enough about me. We're going to move on to the next pick in the draft, which was Sentient Coffee and his Venezuelan Vaporeons. This is a team I actually really like this team. This player, for those that don't know, played in our season 0, our last season, kind of a test season, and he was brand new to the draft format, brand new to competitive Pokemon. He'd never done this before, and his team was kind of a mess. His play was kind of a mess, but he definitely was the most improved player by far, and I'm excited to see what he can do this season. And he kicked it off by drafting what I think is a pretty stellar team. It's got some flaws, like there are 3 water types, which kind of messes up the coverage, but their secondary types cover them pretty well. Tentacruel's not weak to grass, Gastrodon's not weak to electric, so those common water coverage moves don't really do what you would expect it to do against 3 water types. As well as that, he has only 2 rock resists with a lot of weaknesses. The Charizard is 4 times weak to rocks before it megas. The Volcarona is 4 times weak to rocks. The Rotom is weak to rocks. And then you've only got the Passimian and the Gastrodon that actually resist Stealth Rocks if they get set up. Does Grass resist? Grass doesn't resist rock.
Oh, I forgot. No, here's what happened.
Yeah, you confuse the ability. I do it all the time. Dhelmise's ability, Steel Worker, it gives it Steel Stab, but it does not give it Steel Typing. So it does not have that rock resist, although it does have the Steel Stab, which is kind of nice. On top of that, there are a lot of psychic sweepers in this league. Mega Gallade was drafted. We saw Mega Gardevoir earlier. There's an Alakazam kicking around. There's a lot of crazy special psychic threats. And this team has Skuntank, who is immune to psychic, and then 2 weaknesses, and nothing else that can really eat those psychic hits. So I can see that as another defensive hole in this team. And on top of that, speed tiers. Speed tiers is something we've talked about a lot because it's very important. This team is a little slow. The best speed tier he's got is base 100, which is Zard, X, Volcarona, and Tentacruel, which used to be that 100 used to be the golden standard, you know, a few generations ago. But Gen 7, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon 100 doesn't really cut it. Of course, he does have the setup options: Quiver Dance, Volcarona, Dragon Dance, Charizard, 2 very popular ones. And once they get that going, it's smooth sailing for them speed-wise. But he has to get that going in the first place, which I can see being a struggle. But you know, like, if he gets it going, those mons are crazy. They will absolutely rip through teams, and I don't see him having much trouble finding holes with the absolutely crazy offensive presence his team has. So, but we'll see what he can do with it. We'll see if that base 100 really is as much of a problem as it seems to be.
Yeah, I'm looking at it too. Obviously, you know, like the excess of water mons right here, but I'm noticing something even more dangerous. Obviously, these mons are few and far between, but freeze dry. If somebody runs in with a mon carrying that, 5 mons are weak to that. So just tread with caution.
Yes, freeze dry. Freeze dry definitely can put in the work against this team. That move specifically, I believe both are. I think, how many mons get freeze dry? I think it's like 5 or something. 2 of them at least were drafted. Cryogonal and Articuno are running around with freeze dry, ready to fire, and that could be a little scary. But you know, that's not something he has to worry about in every battle, at least, which is fortunate for him. Moving on to the next pick in the draft, it was the Charming Chandelures, coached by Uni.
All right, so it's funny because I'm actually playing this team round 1. So here's what I kind of got on him. Infernape and Keldeo, all right? So you got fast, powerful firepower here. The former is probably one of the most offensively versatile mons available, as it can go physical, special, or mixed, and has amazing boosting moves like Swords Dance and Nasty Plot to set up with. While Keldeo has the amazing ability to wreck traditional special walls with Secret Sword, which is powerful outside of that, but absolutely murders things like Blissey, for example. Mega Aerodactyl is going to complement that a little bit further because it's got huge attack, overkill speed, and a deadly arsenal of coverage, some of which can be boosted further by Tough Claws. Unfortunately, it doesn't get that on moves like Stone Edge and Earthquake, which are usually 2 staples of it, but it's still going to hit hard, base 135 offense, right?
Yes, very strong mon.
Not
no
bad.
No slouch.
Probably one of the most dangerous megas not in the overused tier, so
absolutely.
There you go. Speaking of beat sticks, we've got Kyurem, another mon that's kind of overlooked a little bit. Vanilla Kyurem is a sneaky bait stick. It has great stab and also has the benefit of having great bulk thanks to its legendary BST, which is 600 plus, I'm pretty sure, and it gets Roost, so it has reliable recovery.
Yes, can definitely be a very potent wall breaker, that mon.
Yep, unfortunately, it is weak to ice, but I'll touch on that. Sorry, rock. My bad.
Yes.
You know where I was going.
Rock.
Yes, stealth rocks. So don't switch it in too much. Nidoqueen. All right, so Nidoqueen I actually like because it's Nidoking with a bit less power, but it is able to support and also kind of hit back pretty hard if need be. So it can actually set Toxic Spike and Stealth Rock depending on the need of the team. And of course, the Life Orb Sheer Force combo with stab options with potentially something like Ice Beam, Thunderbolt. Allows it to really have good coverage on top of being a good presence. Now, one more good mon I wanted to touch on is Xatu. So, obviously, Xatu on its own isn't the greatest. You look at its stats, you look at its typing, you're thinking, okay, it's kind of but it's got Magic Bounce.
Magic Bounce. Crazy ability in the draft format because hazards are everywhere.
Everywhere. Status is everywhere.
Yep.
It can support its team with dual screens as well. Another Pokemon that can do that, actually, I'm looking at, is Aromatisse. Aromatisse can do the same on a lesser scale with dual screens, and Aroma Veil blocks Taunt. I did not know that until yesterday. So
there you go.
That's pretty cool. On top of that, you got Machamp, which you can use a Flame Orb Gut set, or you can just Dynamic Punch people and force them to switch all the time, which is kind of cool. Now, weaknesses. One thing I noticed immediately is that 4 out of 10 Mons, including 3 of the most prominent ones I find on the team, Keldeo, Infernape, Nidoqueen, have a Psychic weakness.
And there you go. Like we mentioned with the last team, there are some crazy Psychic threats in the draft.
Yeah.
And if you have that big Psychic weakness, it can be a bit of a problem. The only, you do have the Xatu, but Zatu's not the bulkiest, and it can't switch in too many times. But then there's the Bronzong. The Bronzong's going to be the best check to Psychics, but unfortunately, like it can switch in and it can take the hit, but it's not really a crazy offensive threat. If they want to switch their Psychic out, they can do so pretty much risk-free.
Yeah, and it doesn't have reliable recovery either.
Yes, that as well. Leftovers only take you so far.
Yeah,
but overall, I do really like this team. It's got great offense, great defense, and lots of good support options, like you said. But you take away the Xatu, and all of a sudden, the team is really, really weak to hazards. The only other remover on the team is, I believe, Aerodactyl with Defog, but Aerodactyl does not want to have Defog. Aerodactyl never wants to be carrying Defog, which means Xatu is going to be essential for dealing with hazards, and if Xatu gets removed and hazards go up, this team is going to have a lot of trouble playing a long game. And there are a lot of really bulky defensive teams, like we saw the Vigrid Vespiquens, like we saw my own team, which can play that defense really well. And if this team ends up in that situation where it's just kind of a war of attrition, I don't really see how they can take it. It's going to be very, very hard if that Xatu goes down. They'll have to be protecting the Xatu with their lives. But moving on to the next team, the Williamsburg Whimsicotts.
Oh my god, I love this.
Pantros and co-coached by Incog. This team is Versatility, the movie, the video game. I look at it and it's like, a couple of the Mons, you know what they're here to do. Steelix is here to just be bulky and tank hits. Hydreigon's here to deal damage and punch holes. But then there's a Jirachi, there's a Whimsicott, there's a Victini, there's I don't even know what Dusknoir does. There's a lot of Mons on this team that have that X factor, have that surprise, that it makes it very, very difficult to build against them. But if you just look at it on the surface, you look at like standard sets, you know, Victini is going to be offense, Jirachi's probably going to be a little bit more defense. If you just look at it that way, honestly, the team has some problems. I don't like the speed tiers for one thing at all. The team overall is kind of slow. Jirachi and Victini both sitting at base 100, Raichu at 110, and Minior in shields down at 120. Other than that, everything's kind of slow. They will absolutely need Choice Scarf to deal with those really, really fast Mons. Like we saw Mega Sceptile base 145, you know, like there's a lot of base 110s running around that only Raichu can match until Minior goes shoes down. It's the speed tiers are going to be an issue. They don't have really any way to get around that aside from some kind of Tailwind, which running Tailwind in singles isn't the greatest strategy. But you know, speed tier is definitely the biggest problem I can see for this team. The team is very fat though, so hopefully it won't be that much of an issue because the fat Mons that they have can actually deal damage. Jirachi is very bulky and it can deal a lot of hits. Victini as well can be bulky and it can deal a lot of damage. Steelix is incredibly bulky and actually has a very respectable attack stat. And then Hitmontop is another bulky Mon with Intimidate that you give him Fightinium Z and a close combat, he's going to take something down, you know? It's not like some of the other teams we saw with their defensive pivots not really having that offensive presence that those options. There are a lot of options for the defensive Mons here, and there's a lot of damage they can dish out. So the speed tiers may not be that much of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this team right here, and I think they've got great potential, all things considered. They possess two of the event Pokemon right there, as you see. 100 BST across the board. It's so nice to have Pokemon like that. You got another 600 BST in Hydreigon that can take a hit if it's not from a fairy type and dish back incredibly hard. Steelix, I don't see a Sand Force setup for it, but it can still hit reasonably hard outside of it. And I mean, Shell Smash Minior, just be prepared for
Minior gets going. That thing's gonna be a little scary.
Just a little bit.
Just a pinch. Moving on though, the next team getting into the end of the draft. I think we've got 4 or 5 teams left. We have the Honorable Houndooms, coached by Fencer. Take it away, Mickel.
All right, I got you. So, first pick the Fencer made was actually Mew. And as somebody who owned Mew in the last season of the draft league, you can definitely attest to how much of a jack of all trades Mew is.
Absolutely.
Functions offensively, defensively, can support exceptionally well, and learns every single TM and move tutor move, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
So, has a wealth of options to choose from.
Versatility.
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 And that is going to really determine how Fencer's team works in-game, depending on what set he goes with Mew.
Yes.
Now, his mega pick was Houndoom, which is interesting. It is a fearsome sweeper with devastating stabs that can go further beyond if it has an opportunity to set up nasty plot. However, Houndoom, as you know, isn't the most bulky thing out there.
Definitely not. A little squishy, a little slow too.
Yeah, base 115 speed isn't terrible.
It's not bad, but for a mega, for the mon you want sweeping, it just might not cut it. Because there are a lot of faster big threats, you know? And there's not a lot to back that speed up. Most of the team is honestly pretty slow.
I was going to say that
save
too.
for Electrode and like Unburdened Hitmonlee, which is it's a bit of an issue. You know, you need speed. You can't have just one fast mon that's going to be your sweeper every game because that's just not going to work.
No.
And people are going to be prepared for that. People are going to have mons that can eat the dark hits and the fire hits. You know, it's a bit of an issue. And speaking of defensive coverage, this team, defensive coverage on this team.
I was gonna mention something. So Fencer, he's got a couple of nice walls right here. Stackataka and Gigalith. Here's the problem: they are both weak to the same things.
Yes.
And that actually carries through the whole team. Counting on my fingers right here, 6 of the 10 are weak to fighting.
That's right. And he's only got 1 resist to fighting in the Mew. Nothing else resists the type. Nothing else is super effective against the type with any kind of stab. And 6 of the mons are weak to fighting. That's a big problem. That's a big problem.
Huge problem. 4 out of 10 to water, 4 out of 10 to ground.
Yes.
I mean, those are 3 types that you really have to it's almost a given you need to prepare for those types.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see how he kind of jumps around those hoops. Now, he does have Suicune, which is a classic bulky water that is hard to take down with leftovers and Scald, and can Calm Mind and sit there for a while with leftovers, but it's not going to be the answer to everything. It doesn't resist.
Not at all. Unfortunately. Suicune can't solve all your defensive problems. And then offensively, kind of lacking a little bit in coverage too. Like you said, that he's got that water weakness. 4 mons weak to water. And he doesn't have anything to break other bulky waters. Suicune's like the marquee bulky water. And then you've got like Milotic was drafted. There's a Blastoise, there's a Tentacruel. The only mon he has that has super effective stab against those waters is Electrode. But Electrode is not very strong. He's like a Z move maybe can break some of those mons, but for the most part, Electrode is not going to be able to take out those bulky waters in.
And you're not going to give a Z crystal
hits.
to You're not going to give a Z crystal to Electrode.
Not likely.
Its role, I see it as being more of a dual screen Volt Switcher.
Yes.
To get momentum up and maybe help those defensive frailties a bit. He does have Porygon Z and Crocodile to devastate opposing teams if unchecked.
Yes.
Obviously, Crocodile is fearsome with the Scarf equipped. We've seen it with Intimidate and Moxie. Porygon Z, unfortunately, because of the rules you stated, cannot use Z conversion.
No Z conversion, but Z Crystal's still very good on this mon. Z Hyper Beam is enough to kill pretty much anything with adaptability and the stab bonus. It's kind of an incredible nuke. We'll see if he decides to use that. Or not, but you know.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know. Moving on. The next team, the Krabby Klub, Prince Cobb, and Ethan NRP. This team is phenomenal. I love this team. It's honestly just so good. He has awesome speed tiers. Gallade, Tapu Koko, both really fast. Cobalion at 108 can hit just checks a lot of things too. Azelf is fast, and he's got Volt Turn on the Cobalion, on the Tapu Koko, on the Azelf to help keep up that offensive momentum. But unlike some of the other teams I've seen with, that hyper offense, that Volt Turn, his defensive pivots are very, very, very strong as well. Milotic, like we were just talking about bulky waters. That mon is incredibly difficult to break. Cobb actually had it in the test season we did, season 0, and it was terrifying. It's honestly incredibly scary. Lurantis is a defensive mon that actually is also a huge threat. It can switch in and take some resisted hits, and then if it gets one superpower off with that contrary boost, all of a sudden it's a huge problem. Cobalion as well. I had Cobalion last season. While this mon isn't necessarily commonly a defensive pivot, its steel fighting typing and its ability in Defiant, I believe it's Defiant. No, it's Justified, which gives it a stat boost if it gets hit by a dark move, allows it to come in like as a surprise, take a hit that it resists and takes no damage from, and then you've got an offensive threat on the field and you've got the momentum in your favor. It's really, really easy for this team to keep the momentum on their side, to keep the game going the way they want it to go. I don't see an awful lot of holes, honestly. But like we said for the other offensive teams too, if he does lose that momentum and he's playing from behind, while the defensive pivots he has are great, he does not really have an awful lot of them. If Milotic goes down, suddenly there's this huge chunk in his defenses where he doesn't really have another crazy Pokemon to fill.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Milotic, I feel like, is going to be the glue of that team.
Absolutely.
None of the other Mons here, now, obviously, Gallade and Cobalion are very fast, but, again, they're going to go down to repeated wear and tear, and then Coco's not going to take too many hits. Blaziken's not going to take hits. Dragalge, Clawitzer. The only thing I could see that could help out is Eviolite Dusclops, and even then, it is taunt bait, though.
Yes, unfortunately. It's taunt bait. It doesn't really have much of an offensive presence, but it is bulky, which, you know, could be helpful. It can actually it can have an offensive presence if it finds an opportunity to set up. It actually has a bunch of good setup options, and it does have a lot of coverage moves. It's just that the stats don't necessarily back it up.
Yeah. Azelf is nice, though. I feel like Azelf could
is
definitely
a great threat.
A sneaky lead, also can sweep if needed, but definitely something you gotta have in the back of your mind.
It's got rocks and U-turn, and it's got crazy offensive coverage with base 120, I believe, in both offenses, which is nothing to scoff at. Those are some really, really good stats. It's got a lot of offensive options, that mon. It's honestly a very underrated tier 2 mon. I don't see it picked up an awful lot, but it's really, really good at what it does. Moving on to the next team, though, is Benji and the Mischievous Murkrows.
All right, here we go. So, we're looking at this right here. I'm seeing Zero Aura. I'm seeing Heatran. I'm seeing Gyarados. Those are 3 mons with incredible offensive presence. Amazing coverage. Fantastic core, even defensively, too, on switch-ins, because Gyarados and Zero Aura cover each other very well with Intimidate into Volt Absorb. Heatran's got Flash Fire as well. Heatran can also do a bit of a defensive thing as well. It can spread status around with Lava Plume and Toxic if needed. It can kind of sit there, just disrupt people, but it can hit pretty hard if needed too. Zero Aura has base 143 speed, so that's kind of scary a bit.
Just a tad.
Just a tad. Also, that offense is kind of supplemented a lot by Mega Diancie, who has base 160 offense.
I'm waiting for you to mention that mon. It's terrifying. It's such a crazy offensive threat.
Base 160 offenses, base 110 speed. It's like, hold on a second. What happened here? How did this thing become as strong as it is? And it's got fantastic coverage as well. It can also safeguard itself from stat drops because it has clear body, and it can set up rocks too. So that's kind of nice.
Crazy mon.
Crazy mon right there. Obviously, got to be careful with it. It's kind of walled out by steel types a little bit, so just got to be careful.
Well, not really walled out. It has earth power, but it will die to any hit from a steel type.
Yes. Ferrothorn. I like Ferrothorn a lot. I've loved Ferrothorn ever since it came out. 131, 116 defenses, fantastic typing and grass steel. Obviously, fire is a thing, but aside from that, it's got great resist across the board, access to spikes and stealth rock, which is insane. Can further annoy opponents with moves like Leech Seed, Knockoff, and Thunder Wave, and it can hit back a bit if you want because it has Gyro Ball off of really bad speed. And you know how good that is.
No, there you go, yeah. But as you're saying, crazy, some really good offensive threats, but past those handful of offensive threats, the defensive Mons, while they have their moments offensively, some of them, Golbat, Claydol, Sableye, to name a few, and Ferrothorn too, without that gyro ball slowdown, don't really pack as much of a punch as you might want from a defensive pivot. So
yeah, they don't really.
Yes, overall, like, this team is great. I think this team is really, really good. But if I had to nitpick about something, I'd say the defensive pivots don't really do much in the way of preserving momentum for the team. They don't pack as much of a punch as you would want. They aren't really going to catch anybody off guard, and there's not as many options for, Volt turning to keep momentum, some things like that, as we've seen from other teams. There are a few, but not a crazy amount. So I could see this team, if it falls behind, not really having that way to, pivot around and get the momentum back in their favor. And
also speed tiers.
yes, speed tiers. The speed tiers are great. The speed tiers overall are really good on this team, I think.
Well, there's only Zero
Diancie-
or at 140.
Zero is at 140. Diancie's at 110 though, and
But that's it.
what's Primeape's speed again? I don't remember.
95.
It's 95, which isn't bad. Scarf is pretty decent. The speed tiers.
That's true.
The speed tiers are they're not bad, and those two. Fortunately, the two Mons that have the fastest speed are some of the scariest offensive threats. So it's not really. I don't think speed's that much of a problem for this team, but I do see, like I said, the defensive Mons, namely Golbat, Claydol, Sableye, Ferrothorn, they don't scare many things out. They can switch in and take a hit, but the other Mon that's sitting against them isn't really afraid of it most of the time. Those Mons are kind of setup fodder. I can see other teams that have great Mons for setup, like, for example, the Venezuelan Vaporeons with the Volcarona and the Charizard, having a free opportunity to just set up, and then all of a sudden you're in a lot of trouble because this Mon just set up in front of you, and you don't have great ways to deal with setup. You don't have a single Mon that gets Haze. You don't have anything like an unaware Quagsire. If a Mon gets set up in front of you, which it very well can against some of those defensive Mons, it's just going to tear through the team, and there's not a lot you can do about it.
Yeah, I'm looking at that too, and it's just like I get it. The team does have a lot of bulk.
Yes.
Let's not play that down.
Not to discredit the team is good overall, but
But it definitely.
Yeah.
If it loses one of its offensive spark plugs, it's gonna be a bit difficult to bring that momentum back, and I don't think there's enough to really do that.
Yeah, but overall, very solid team. Moving on to the next one, we got Siderius and the Staggering Staraptors. This team is fat. The first thing I think about when I look at the team is just the absolutely atrocious bulk on this team. You've got Mega Camerupt, Dragonite, Rotom Wash, Arcanine, Glaceon, Tangrowth. Like, so many of these mons are just so incredibly hard to break. And as a result, they don't really have the best speed, but they have a great Trick Room option. Mimikyu is actually a fantastic Trick Room setter. While it's not necessarily super slow itself, it has Disguise, which means it will always be able to get that Trick Room off. And once the Trick Room's up, mons like Mega Camerupt can really just go to town. And like I said with the Disguise, because you have a guaranteed Trick Room, the speed tiers are kind of mitigated. Of course, there's still a problem. If you just get your Trick Room stalled out and your Disguise is broken, then all of a sudden it's like, well, what are you going to do? Like your Trick Room's down, you're slow, they're fast. It's hard to come back from that position, and that's the biggest flaw I really see in this team is the speed. It's just super, super, super slow. But on top of that, hazards for this team are a little bit lacking. Got Barbaracle, which sets rocks, but I mean, that's a Barbaracle. And then Tangrowth, who also sets. Tangrowth is kind of the reliable setter. Removal though, not a lot of options. Rotom and Dragonite, I believe, are the only removers with Defog, and Dragonite takes 25% from that. He doesn't really want to take that 25%, so I can see hazards being a bit of an issue because this team's so slow and bulky. I can see other people just laying hazards, throwing toxics, and stalling it out. But if Siderius can get going with something like that Trick Room, or have some of these mons just be unbreakable in the matchups, I can definitely see him pulling out a lot of wins because these mons are so fat and so powerful. But yeah, the speed is a problem. It's a big issue.
Yeah, speed's definitely an issue. I also noticed that he's got ground and fighting weaknesses up the wazoo too.
And this is true, yes.
He's got Mega Camerupt, Arcanine, Bisharp, Barbaracle, are weak to ground, Ambipom and Glaceon, as well as the latter two I mentioned before. Mentioned to fighting, so definitely want to keep an eye out for those so that they don't fall too far behind.
Those weaknesses, pretty bad. He does have the checks though. He does have some checks to those, unlike some of the other teams we've seen with big weaknesses. Dragonite and Rotom both immune to ground, and then Mimikyu immune to fighting while Dragonite resists it. So it's not all bad.
It's not all bad, and I do like the Dragonite Rotom Wash top 2 core that he picked, because Rotom Wash, we know how great it is.
Oh yes.
Has good offensive presence, but is even better as a utility man. Can create momentum with Volt Switch, can burn people. It checks other waters, so that's kind of cool.
It does check out other waters, and that is kind of cool. But moving on, we're going to go to our second last team, pick 15 in the draft, the Garreg Mach Garchomps, coached by Kaiser Cricket. Mickel?
All right, so looking at this, Kaiser kind of had the opposite snake draft that I did. So they were able to take picks basically within, like they had a good window to pick them, because like they'd wait just like for the next person to pick 2, and then they come back to them, and then they have to wait a while, which allows you to stack up immediately on a need and kind of build that focused team. And looking at what he's done here, I like what they have. Tapu Bulu, one of the biggest threats in Gen 7. I feel like it's really hard to take down on the physical side. It's got so many recovery methods like Synthesis, Grassy Surge, and Horn Leech, which work in tandem with leftovers if need be. It's very much strong like Bull.
Yes, strong like Bull. Yes.
Yes. With the Woodhammer, Superpower, Mega Horn, and Stone Edge, for example, at his disposal. No physical fairy coverage, which is a bit disappointing. But you know what? It's still got some.
It's kind of heartbreaking. But also, you breathe a sigh of relief when you see that Tapu Bulu doesn't have Play Rough to hit you with. When you're the other guy,
you're like, whoa, hold on.
Yes.
Now, speaking of breathing a sigh of relief, you definitely won't when you see Mega Garchomp, because it hits very hard, forces switches like a madman, decimates opponents with 170, 120 offenses. Dragon Ground Fire coverage is what it's usually going to run, and it can safely set rocks, because it can take hits even better than regular Garchomp can.
Absolutely.
Other offensive weapons I want to touch on: Entei, Fearsome Physical Beat Stick, which can also burn things that doesn't finish off with regularity.
The classic.
Thank you, Sacred
Banded
Fire.
Entei. You got things
Also
like Sacred
Extreme
Fire,
Speed.
things like Earthquake, things like Extreme Speed. Yep.
Doesn't get Earthquake, but it does get Stomping Tantrum.
Right, doesn't get I thought it got Earthquake. Anyway, Stopping Tantrum though. Ground coverage is good.
Yeah. Alakazam can massacre opponents, has done since Gen 1. Sky High Special Attack and Speed, backed by Life Orb Magic Guard, which means it doesn't take damage from it. So, kind of scary. Obviously, it's Alakazam, so it's frail as hell if you hit it with a priority move. Now, speaking of which, things that can take hits. We've got Empoleon, Diancie, Blissey. These 3 provide great support in terms of high defensive stats, as well as spreading status and entry hazards with the former, able to pseudo haze quite a bit with Toxic Roar, and the latter 2 can have pretty good cleric properties, all things considered. Given the number of slower team members, can potentially run Trick Room sets through Diancie, I feel like. Obviously, Alakazam and Entei are the only ones that crack base 100 speed. Outside of that, it is a little bit slow. So if you do want to get the jump on a faster team, it is nice if you have that Trick Room support. They do have Toxicroak who can Sucker Punch things a bit, but you know.
They've got some priority, got some speed, but overall, like you said, kind of a slow team, which could wind up being a problem. And another big issue I see with this team is a lack of versatility, honestly. A lot of the Mons here, you know what they're going to do. Alakazam is going to come in and try and smack you on the special side. Entei's going to come in and try and smack you on the physical side. Blissey's a special wall. That's all it does. It's just a special wall. That's all it's here for, you know? Tapu Bulu's got some options, but not a crazy amount. There aren't a lot of Mons here that really have that surprising element to them, like some of the things like Mew and Jirachi have. So Kaiser's gonna have to get very, very creative to really catch other teams off guard and swing games in his favor.
One more thing I wanted to point out. So I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like the Tapu Bulu Mega Garchomp duo might not work as well as I first thought.
It's true.
Why is
The grassy terrain, the Tapu Bulu sets actually weakens Garchomp's Earthquake, which, could be a problem. It might not be a problem. We'll have to see how he plays it out.
Yeah.
But that's definitely something to look at as a minor issue.
But although grassy terrain, again, it does mitigate opposing Earthquakes coming in.
Yes.
Four Mons of this roster are weak to ground.
Yes.
That's Empoleon, Diancie, Entei, and Toxicroak. So precautions definitely need to be taken when going up against a Mon that possesses that kind of coverage. So
yes,
definitely.
Definitely. Moving on, we've got the very last team, the last team in the draft, the Cosmic Crobats, coached by Crow.
Ooh.
Now, this guy was in our test season, in our season 0, and unfortunately, he didn't win a single game. So he came into this season and he was telling us all, "This is my season. I'm gonna make the comeback. This is it. I'm gonna pop off. This is gonna be great." And then he drafted this, and I gotta be honest, Crow, I'm not here for it. It's
oh no.
It's really this team has a lot of issues. He went super hard on the hail offense, which unfortunately leaves him with some very, very, very potent weaknesses. So he's got a lot of mons that are weak to rocks, for one. Rock type, super effective on the Abomasnow, on the Ninetales, on the Cloyster, on the Mandibuzz, and he's only got 2 mons that have removal, which are Cloyster and Mandibuzz. So already, right there, his only 2 removers of hazards are weak to stealth rocks. And then looking past that, this team as a whole is weak to 2 types, electric and fire. The only 2 mons that are not weak to either of those types are Nidoking and Manectric. So if the Nidoking goes down, Manectric's got Lightning Rod, sure, but it's not really bulky. If the Nidoking goes down, and you've got a mon on the other team, like, for example, Mega Manectric, that has electric and fire as 2 of its main damage-dealing options. Mega Manectric, of course, owned by the London Lycanrocs and Mickel. That mon comes out, and if Nidoking goes down, all of a sudden Mega Manectric is just going to wipe the floor with the rest of your team. It's just really, really big holes on this team that are very, very exploitable by a lot of the other teams. One good thing he does have going for him, I'll give him that, his speed tiers are pretty decent. His mons are okay, like none of them are exceptionally fast, but a lot of them are decently fast. Ninetales is pretty fast, Lucario is pretty fast, Azu has that Aqua Jet to, catch that speed, Manectric is decently fast, and then Sandslash with Slush Rush, because he's got 2 of those Hail Setters in Mega Abomasnow and Ninetales Alola. Slush Rush makes it very fast as well, so I don't see speed really being much of an issue, but defensively, this team is just kind of a mess. It's, whew.
I'm very interested to see if Crow can pull it off and make this team work defensively. I don't wanna rule it out. Obviously, it's going to be a challenge considering, ice types are probably one of the worst defensive types
Absolutely.
of all time. But if he can get the offense set up, this team is scary to stop.
That's true.
So,
it's true.
I mean, you have the accenting coverage. Obviously, Sandslash and Slush Rush is nice. Abomasnow's got priority, so it can definitely come through. Azumarill's kind of scary too. Let's not forget.
Mm-hmm.
So Nidoking hits hard. Nidoking's always been a favorite of mine. I'm literally looking at my figurine for it right now. So I know how good it is.
The team, if Crow gets it going, he's got the offense, but just the defense. If the game is not going in his favor, it's very, very, very hard. He just does not have that defensive coverage. But that is it. That's the last team. We've gotten through the draft analysis for the Season 1 of the Casual Cup. That's all from us. We've also actually got an initial power ranking video coming, as well as there's going to be weekly pick'ems and weekly reviews, so do look forward to those. But this has been Kachurin.
And this has been Mickel. So, hope you guys enjoyed. This was fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good. Maybe went a little longer than I thought it was going to be, but thanks for watching, folks. Stay tuned for the rest of the videos coming out. Hopefully today, if not today, then they'll be coming out tomorrow, being Tuesday, today being Monday when this video goes live. But that's all from us. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you in the next video.